Welcome to the It's in Queens podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and this is the only podcast that focuses on my borough of Queens. This podcast is brought to you each week thanks to the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council. Together, they work tirelessly to showcase our borough as a destination. And it's a destination filled with amazing experiences, cultural gems, opportunities for everyone who lives here, is visiting, or who works here. Queens is not just the most diverse place in the world, it's also home to one of the strongest arts and cultural sectors anywhere in New York City. From world-class museums to theaters to community arts groups and innovative performance spaces, our borough thrives on creativity. That creative energy doesn't just enrich our lives, it fuels our economy. Queens supports a robust creative industry, one that relies heavily on freelancers and independent contractors, artists who bring their talents to stages, galleries, classrooms, and newsrooms across the borough. Freelancers make up one of the most diverse segments of our workforce. They represent a wide range of professions, from writers and designers to photographers, filmmakers, and tech specialists. And while their work powers so much of what we experience in Queens, freelancers also face unique challenges, navigating health insurance, contracts, and financial stability on their own. That's why the Freelancers Union, a national organization based right here in New York City, plays such an important role. The union advocates for fair treatment, provides benefits, and helps amplify the voices of the diverse sector of freelancers everywhere. So this week, I'm excited to hear from one of Queens' very own freelancers, journalist and storyteller Michael Stahl. He's written for publications including the New York Times, Rolling Stone, and The Guardian, and his work often explores the intersection of community, culture, and everyday people. Michael Stahl, welcome to the It's in Queens podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff.
So let's start off by finding more about you. You're a lifetime Queens resident. Talk a little about growing up here and what it has meant to you living in Queens.
I take a tremendous amount of pride having grown up in Astoria, probably too much, maybe, but anytime anyone asks me where I'm from, there's just a little extra kick, I think, in my speech when I say, I'm from Astoria or even just from New York in general. I have to admit, full disclosure, I did live in Los Angeles of all places. I lived in Los Angeles for 18 months in my mid 20s. But it was just a quick there and back and with a divorce in between. But outside of that, I've lived in Astoria most of my life with a little quick stint in Jackson Heights and then another year and a half in Sunnyside, Woodside rather. But I'm 46 and I think it's something like 42 out of my 46 years I've lived in Astoria proper.
But you moved back here mainly because the transportation system is a lot better than LA.
It's funny you mention that. I have friends in Los Angeles and I'm doing some writing work right now for a company that's based in LA. And I was texting with my friends and I was like, should I tell this company that they should hire me full time when I have a meeting with them next week and then they could move me to LA? And my friends were like, hell yeah, dude. And I was like, nah, rent stabilized apartment. I think I'm good.
Well, you've mentioned your writing, so that's where I want to go to next. You've had a career as a writer and creative. Talk a little about why you pursued this path.
Yeah, honestly, so I taught high school English for 11 years right out of college, and I did enjoy that. And I think I was pretty good at it. I was honestly probably a better high school English teacher than I am a writer. But 13 years ago, I decided to take a plunge and become a freelance writer. And really, the only motivation I had was just to be more creative in my professional life. I had started blogging on my own while I was teaching the last couple of years that I was teaching, and just kind of felt myself getting better at it. And I'd always been I started reading when I was like 3 years old. I was in honors English in high school and stuff like that. So, I think I just felt like maybe this is something I can do, and let me give this a shot before I'm like really too old to like really make something of it. So quit teaching at age 33, and somehow 13 years to the week, I'm still here as a freelance writer in New York.
Well, this borough has a in my view, a very robust creative sector. I did a show a few years ago where I handled the publicity and could not believe how many of even the performers, this was Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish, how many of them lived in Astoria and in Queens. It was just amazing. Your work covers a range of styles and subjects. Do you have a favorite genre or topic that you always keep coming back to?
Yeah, definitely. If I had my druthers, I would just cover like the arts and culture and sports just all the time. But again, as a freelancer and just trying to make rent in New York, it's a rent stabilized apartment, but it's not necessarily a cheap apartment. I just try and get my hands on anything that I can get. So I've written about business, I've written about technology, I've written about health, mental health, I've written about politics, all kinds of things.
So, is there a particular memorable moment in your writing career that kind of stands out, makes you smile every time? For me, I think of certain stories I did when I was a working journalist and the ones that either make me frustrated thinking about them or bring me a smile because I loved working on them. I'm curious if you have one or two.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have quite a few, and I'm glad you asked this question because, the work it's a grind. It really is a grind, and sometimes that admittedly, that eats away maybe sometimes in my appreciation for what I do and what I've been able to do. So it is nice to think about, the past and some of the, my sort of more prouder, sort of happier moments. I guess one that I'll share with you. It actually didn't come in my journalism on the journalism side of things because I also do some ghostwriting. I write marketing content. I write all kinds of different things. I believe me, I can go on and on. But I was the co-writer for the autobiography of Bartolo Colón, who baseball fans will be very familiar with. He was a pitcher for the New York Mets and also briefly for the New York Yankees. And he kind of has like this like sort of cult status, and he's just like quite a character, and New York Mets fans especially just like really kind of took to him. So long story short, I got the opportunity to go down to the Dominican Republic, see where he grew up, hang out with him for a little while, and interview him. But I also interviewed members of his family. And interviewing his father was an incredibly emotional, um, just few minutes because his father told me this incredibly like spirited, inspirational story about how when Bartolo was young, they were in like abject poverty, and his father owned a grocery store, and his father would like pick his own avocado and pick his own coffee beans and pick his own all kinds of cacao and all kinds of things to sell in the store. So one day Bartolo was like, I don't know, 10 or 11 years old or something like that. And his father wakes him up and is just like, hey, get up, come help me in the field, pick some cacao. And Bartolo's like, no, I'm tired. Like, I don't want to go. His father like couldn't get him to go. And so the father goes out into the field on his own and into the to pick some cacao on his own. And he goes to like pull a cacao off a tree, and the branch like kicks back in his eye, and he like falls off this like little ladder that he had. He's like on the ground. And he when he finally like regains his eyesight, he was like bleeding from his forehead and stuff like that. When he regains his eyesight, he sees Bartolo and he says, you should have been helping me. You see what happens when you don't help your father, and he's like, I'm cursed to have all these kids that don't help me. Something like that, right? And then Bartolo lifted up his right arm and said, "Don't worry, Dad. With this arm, I'm going to make you rich. You're never going to have to work again." And he went
Wow.
on to be a starting right-handed pitcher in the major leagues and make something like, I don't know, he made like over $80 million dollars or something in the major leagues. And so I hear that story, and uh, I thanked him, profusely for it. And I walked back to the car. I had so one of his friends was driving me around. So I think I was like going back to my hotel or something. So I go back to the car and I go with an interpreter and with a driver, right? And at this point, I've been writing for, let me think, about 7.5 years. And I heard that story and it was just so emotional and it was so incredible that when I was walking back to my car, I like keeled over and like I was just overcome with emotion. And it looked like I was gonna vomit, honestly. And I wasn't. But I was so overcome with emotion that I legitimately I could not walk. I'm not exaggerating. I could not walk. And my interpreter like turned around. He's like, "Hey, are you all right?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, no, I'm fine." And he goes, "Okay." So he turns around and start walking. I take like one step and I like keel over again. And he's like, "Dude, what's wrong?" And I was just like, "Listen," I said, "maybe this sounds really weird. I'm sorry." I was like, I'm just so overcome with emotion after hearing that story. I was like, you have no idea. Like, I took this risk to become a writer, and like, this is my first book, and it's for a guy that like I have this, massive amount of respect and appreciation for. I'm a huge Mets fan. I was like, this, and now I have the like privilege and honor of like you know, delivering this story and how beautiful it is. And I was like, it's this just means so much to me. I can't explain it to you. So I started to like get like a little teary-eyed or something. And the driver comes back and he says in Spanish to the other guy, he's like, "Hey, is everything all right?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, he's okay. Look, he's just, And I go like, "Sorry, sorry, like lo siento" to the driver. And the driver comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, look." And he points to his arm and he has goosebumps down his whole arm from hearing the story as well.
Wow.
And anytime anybody asks me about the sort of number one moment in my career, like that's the first one that comes to mind. And it was just so fantastic.
That's amazing. And I just want to make sure that our listeners know that the name of the book is Big, Sexy Bartolo Colón in his own words. Just make sure people know that so they could look it up.
Yeah.
Um, we're talking about the life of a freelancer, and I know there can be opportunities, but there could also be a number of challenges. And I would love to use this episode as an opportunity to educate our listeners too about the National Freelancers Union, which is headquartered here in New York City, and how the organization has supported you, but also the type of challenges that freelancers face. Because I'm sure some of the folks listening have experienced similar experiences as you have.
Yeah, I mean, freelancing, but really like anything else, when I really have to stop and think about this, like anything else, freelancing, it's give and take. It does provide its stark challenges, but there are definitely like perks as well. So, you set your own schedule and you kind of do work that you want to do, all things like that. Um, but the challenges are that, probably what a lot of people would imagine is it's inconsistent. I mean, I could tell you right now, doing this Friday at 4 o'clock, I am completely exhausted because I have been going so hard on a number of projects for a number of weeks, even months, honestly. I'm very fortunate. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I'm very fortunate to be getting as much work as I am, especially this year. But last year was really bad in terms of just work. In fact, I fell into like $20,000 in debt last year. I probably, could have curbed my spending a little bit more, to be quite honest with you. But um, that's how little work I got, and I just kind of like lived off credit cards last year. But slowly but surely, I'm starting to pay that back now. So that right there, it explains the level of inconsistency that we can expect. But when it's busy, it always seems like it's like a geyser, like it's just like relentlessly busy. And when it's slow, it always just sort of feels like, the universe has forgotten you exist and you're never going to get, a job again. So I would say that's a big one. The worst part, and this, fortunately for me, this hasn't happened too often, but if anyone ever asked me what's the worst part of freelancing, um, it's what someone called one time chasing money. It's when you finish a job and someone had said that they would pay you on a certain day or whatever, and then you don't get your money like that day because you've probably, if you're fortunate enough to keep getting work, you've probably already moved on to like another, another job, and everything you do, you need to get paid. You don't get paid time off. So you're always just kind of like churning stuff out, churning stuff out, churning stuff out, working for this next week, working for this next month of bills. So when people pay you late, again, unless you have a tremendous amount of financial flexibility, which I don't know if freelance writers, freelance journalists especially have that kind of flexibility. Unless you have some kind of like, financial sustainability, flexibility, you're going to feel it when people pay you late. And it's frustrating for me because it's like I did everything I was asked. And I know I always give 100%. I took a risk to become a writer. I don't take anything for granted. I always do everything as hard as I can. And to then not be paid on time, to have another person like not kind of uphold their end of the bargain, and then me have to take energy to
Hmm.
like write like a conscientious and what's professional email back to someone while I'm raging mad is is challenging. I might not be raging mad, but it's just it's frustrating to not have someone else kind of uphold their end of the bargain.
So,
Yeah.
given what you've learned through your experiences, what advice would you give for someone who's considering a similar career to yours?
Um, I would say give it a try for sure. I would say it's not for everybody. To be quite honest with you, I don't know if it's for me. I think that, I've just had I was motivated and to become a writer, and you know for years and years things just kept continued to progress. So I never felt like a reason to stop. But it's a grind. Like I said, there's a lot of inconsistency, and that might not be something that certain people can handle. And I'm not judging anybody. Um, so I would say I would encourage people to give it a try, but to also remember that, nothing is static and life is a journey. So you could try it for a little while and then go back to, whatever, a full-time job. A full-time job has its perks too. Again, it's more consistent first and foremost. But then you have to, manage personalities. You're gonna work with people every day that, maybe you're not the hugest of fans of. So again, it's a give and take, and I would say that it can be very rewarding. It can be a lot of fun. It is nice to just kind of, I don't know, hit the snooze button any day you want for the most part. I don't know, all the perks that come with freelancing. So give it a try, but like, you know, really take stock of how you're handling the pressure, how you're handling the grind. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. Do something else. There's no shame in that.
And I'll just go back to one of the earlier questions about the Freelancers Union, because from my conversations with them, they have a wealth of resources. And I'd love for you to just for a moment or two talk about how you've utilized them for anyone else who's listening, and it is free to become a member, which is important to stress, the type of resources that you have found helpful to you that maybe they could use.
Yeah, for me, so honestly, for me, number one is maybe not the most sort of helpful thing ever in terms of like building a business necessarily, but when you work from home, it's one of the things that's tough about that when you do it all the time is, not really communicating, not talking to like other human beings for a certain amount of time, 24, 48, 72 hours at a time. Which is,
It felt like during the pandemic.
yeah, and it was funny. Like I remember when it was during the pandemic, people were like, "Oh, so this is like fine for you," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "No, like this is now like what I was dealing with like times 10 because now I can't even go out after work. I can't go out on weekends. So no, it was that really exacerbated things. But anyway, the freelancers union in Brooklyn at Industry City, and I believe the neighborhood is Sunset Park, Brooklyn. They have a co-working hub, which is well air conditioned, and there's a lot of light, natural sunlight that goes in there, and it's free to book. Again, it's free, like you said, it's a free to be a member, and once you're a member, it's free to book, and you can book like a full day, you can book a morning, you can book an afternoon. And I really enjoy that because, you just get to be around people and then on top of that, it's a bit of a hike for me, honestly. It's about an hour and 5 minutes door to door to get there. So I don't go there, to be honest with you, a ton. But I do enjoy going there. I do like that I have that as an option always. And they do, the freelancers union that is in the hub will often do a number of like networking events. And I'm sure to always to go and try and leverage those as best I can. And honestly, like one of my best clients this year, um, this guy named Brian Delatorre, who's in advertising and marketing rather. I met him at the Freelancers Union at a networking event there, and we've really hit it off. He's also a big baseball fan. He's actually a Royals fan, and so he has it over me that the Royals beat the Mets in the World Series in 10 years ago. But Brian's a great guy, and he gave me like a good amount of business like earlier this year that coming after a tough year last year, I really appreciated. So I'm proof positive that, networking is everything. So that would be another piece of advice for aspiring freelancers is you have to network and just if I may just take another moment on that. Because people ask me this all the time. When you go to networking events, people are like, "Oh, it's like I hate those. They're so awkward and this and that," or people are just, that they don't want to like be vulnerable and talk to others. Anytime someone mentions that to me, I say, "Look," and a lot of times they say like, "You're so good at it." And I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody as much as like anybody else. Like, but it's this is how I eat. This is how I make a living. So I have to do it. So I put myself out there. But everybody at these things, everyone at these things feels awkward. Everyone feels vulnerable. Just lean into it. Make a joke about it. Be like, "Hey, you're trapped with me now." Like, something like, I don't know. Like just everybody feels awkward. So if you just take the first step, um, it's they're usually everyone's pretty pleasant and no one's gonna everyone knows why they're there. So they're gonna be open to talking to you if you just again put that energy out there.
And that is some very good advice for someone who's considering this as a career. So, getting out there is important, but getting out there in Queens is something I want to kind of segue over to ask for some of your recommendations for our listeners. As a nearly lifetime person living in Queens, so
Let's just
except for
call it lifetime. Let's just
okay,
call it lifetime.
lifetime thing. Do
We
you
can
have
forget about the LA thing.
do you have
I have.
do you have a favorite place to visit or explore in Queens that you want our listeners to know about?
Oh man, one. It's limited to one.
Okay,
Um,
you can give more than one.
I mean, like I said, I'm in Astoria. I'm on Broadway and close to the end line, and I go to Socrates Sculpture Park and Rainy Park all the time. Socrates actually has Wi-Fi, so I've actually just go to the park and do work some of the time. So again, perks of being a freelancer. If I worked in an office, I probably couldn't do that.
Free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, yeah. So Socrates Sculpture Park has free Wi-Fi. You're right on the water there. So it's always, a little more mild, than maybe a little bit further inland. Um, what else? It could be anything. It doesn't have to be freelance work
No,
related.
not freelance work related. And trust me, I know Socrates. That's a good recommendation. Any other
Yeah.
place that you want to recommend that you think people should visit here in Queens?
Yeah, I mean also Astoria Park too. I grew up actually on Demars Boulevard, so Astoria Park was kind of like my first park, but now I'm more central Astoria, so I go more to like Rainy Park and Socrates. If you have never been to, I mean, I'll go back to the Mets, but like Citi Field is awesome. I mean, and I am not just biased. I know plenty of Yankees fans that are actually like Citi Field is way better. than Yankee Stadium. And I actually met I made a new friend over the course of the past year who moved to New York from Columbus, Ohio, and he and his girlfriend, they're not necessarily like the biggest baseball fans, but they just wanted to go see Citi Field, and they were like, "Oh man, like that is such a great ballpark." And the reason, and just to give people explain why to people, is that the bottom sort of row, the rotunda, you could see the game as you walk through the stadium. And there's tons of great food there. There's just all kinds of great views. And you're never there aren't really too many places where you can't see the game. So you can be up out of your seat, and they designed it this way on purpose. You could be up out of your seat, and it almost feels like you're hanging out. Some baseball purists might not love what I'm about to say, but you're almost like kind of hanging out with your friends, and the game is like in the background kind of thing, which again, if that's the experience you want to have. So my point is like you don't even have to be crazy into baseball, but go to Citi Field. It's a wonderful place to be, and especially when the Mets are good like they are this year, the vibes are usually like pretty fantastic. So that also comes to mind. What else? I mean, there's all kinds of just like amazing restaurants too in Astoria, especially.
And in fact, that's where I was going to ask you if you have a specific restaurant that you would recommend to people.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, it's what do you want? The question isn't like, what's a great place? The question is, what kind of food do you want? What kind of atmosphere do you want? Because we have a little bit of everything. I mean, personal favorites of mine is always Vesta Trattoria on 21st Street and 30th Avenue. I live a couple blocks away from Sweet Afton, which is just off 30th Avenue on 34th Street. That's a great gastro pub. And just it's been around for like what, 16 years now. It's like constant, it's still like one of the best bars in Astoria in Queens as well. Other places, I mean, there's amazing like Indian food in Jackson Heights, of course, like Jackson Diner. I mean, there's great Indian.
Although it's much smaller now that they moved across the street.
Oh, they did. So what's
Yeah,
funny?
yeah.
I actually here's how far back I go. I think the first time I went to Jackson Diner, if it was the same place, there was like a hole in the wall. And then like a year later, and my friend took me, and then a year later, like it expanded to like they bought like the place like next door because they were so popular. So I remember when it was like the first place. This sounds like it's at least like the third iteration of it.
Yeah.
So Jackson Diner's like fantastic. What else? I mean, the U.S. Open is happening right now. I'm not a huge tennis guy, but a big sports fan, and seeing live tennis, I will say again, even if you're not into tennis or if you're not into sports, try and check out the U.S. Open because live tennis is like a whole different experience than seeing it on TV. I was blown away when I went a number of years ago. What else? This is one of those things where it's like I know a million jokes, but if someone like stops me in the street and is like, "Tell me a joke," I can't think of one.
You've
But
given you've given some good ideas. Now, before I let you go, Michael, if anyone who's listening would like to get in touch with you or see examples of your work, where should they go? What's the first step they should take?
they could just go to my website. It's my first name and my last name, Michael Stahl, and then the word rights. So michaelstahlwrites.com. You
And
can email me
Stahl
there, see my
and
work. Yep, sorry.
and Stahl is spelled for our listeners Stahl.
Yes, yeah, which is a sneaky, like hard last name to like say like over a microphone, like over the phone, like people like hear O's and all kinds of things like all the time. But Stahl, yes.
Perfect. Michael Stahl, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us here on the It's in Queens podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and you know, yeah, just really appreciate it. I hope your listeners enjoy hearing me go on and on.
Fall is one of the best times to be in our borough. The leaves start to turn in our parks and gardens, the air is crisp, and our neighborhoods come alive with seasonal traditions. Whether you're looking for cultural festivals, food events, or family friendly outings, you will certainly find something that captures the spirit of the season right here in Queens. From harvest celebrations at our local farms to arts exhibitions and film screenings, Queens offers a full calendar of activities that reflect the creativity and the diversity of our borough. It's a chance to experience both global traditions and local flavor, sometimes in the same weekend. And of course, we're lucky to have someone who keeps track of it all. Each week, Rob Mackay from the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council joins us to share some of the most exciting happenings in our borough. Here's this week's report.
Hello, Jeff. I know you're against corny puns, but this event is unbeatable. Of course, I'm talking about Vegandale Festival 2025, which is going to take place this Saturday, September 27th from 11 to 8 p.m. at Citi Field. It's actually in Queens for the second year in a row. Yes, it's meatless, eggless, and milkless, but we have about 250 vendors who are going to sell everything from entrees to desserts to juices to T-shirts and so on and so forth. Plus, there's live music and art installations. In case you didn't know, Vegandale Festival was established 10 years ago in Toronto. It's now in about 5 cities, including LA, Chicago, Philadelphia, and it's in Citi Field for the second year in a row. All right, hope to see you there. Enjoy the tofu pups.
That is just a taste of what's happening in our borough this fall. Remember, it's only the beginning. The strength of our borough has always been in its people, its neighborhoods, and its creativity. From our artists and entrepreneurs to our families and longtime residents, this borough thrives because we celebrate who we are and what we can do together. If you're inspired to explore more, the best place to start is the It's in Queens website. So just head right over to itsinqueens.com. And when you're there, you'll find listings of upcoming events, spotlights on local businesses, and guides to help you make the most of every season. And if you're a business owner or a freelancer, don't forget to check out the QEDC's website at queensny.org. The QEDC team works year-round to provide resources and workshops and support that helps businesses grow and succeed right here in our borough. We'd also love to see Queens through your eyes. So when you visit a museum, a restaurant, a park, or a performance, snap a photo or two, share them with us. Tag us on Instagram or X and use the hashtag #It'sInQueens. Each week we highlight some of our favorites, and who knows, your photo could become our photo of the week. So whether you're discovering something new or you're revisiting an old favorite, make this season your season in Queens. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and thank you so much for listening to the It's in Queens podcast. Until next time, keep exploring.